The start of a new segment. So where we left off was obviously a lot of work been done there, and nothing's really changed since the last video. So what we're starting on is I'm sanding these fork legs. I'm going to try and fix this so it functions. This right here is not turning. I'm sure I can get something in there. So we're going to go through the fork leg painting, and then we're going to put the legs back together. I've got some parts here, got some seals. I've got some crush washers. This is the washer that basically goes in the bottom. Down in there, you can see that one's still in. I'm going to use these crush washers, and I'm going to try and find a bolt that will fit in there here in town, so I don't have to wait for another parts delivery off of eBay or Rocky Mountain. So we're going to get going on this video and start with painting these fork legs. Here it is, ready to paint, all taped off, and the little bottom cap. And I'm going back with this, and we'll see how it comes out. I don't really like it might get a little shinier, but I doubt it. I think I just put a light coat on here, and it actually is like a semi-gloss or a satin finish. So I'm gonna go with the tried and true, just gloss automotive paint. And this stuff works well, it dries quick, so I definitely want to shine. I want it to be shiny, and because that's the way they were originally. I remember they had really dark black shiny forks and brake components. It was totally different. I remember them going from silver to black, and the black was shiny. And that's shiny. Kind of looks like a plunger, doesn't it? Looks like a toilet plunger, but really what it is it's the headlight. And I got a brush in there, which I didn't think I was gonna get in there, but I did, and it's gonna get it all nice and clean and shiny, and it's gonna look, bright and uncloudy, which I made the mistake on a few bikes not doing that. And that's a real bold statement when you're coming in, that the headlight looks like it's new. So that's what we're doing. And again, I'm using this red purple power, and I might even take some Windex and spray it in there, and maybe even use a pair of needle nose or something to get a piece of paper towel to wipe around. But just keep working on it, get it nice and clean, and we'll put that back together. Now look at that. That's what I'm talking about. That is bright, crisp, and shiny. So we're putting it back together. Got the little fork grease, the new seal, and I've got new bottom bolts, because this one, the head's a little messed up. It probably would have worked, but maybe save somebody from having to do the drilling out that I had to do on that one. So we'll start to assemble it. So you look on, this is Partzilla, but anyway, when you're ordering, if you're going to their site to order parts, it gives you the breakdown of how everything goes. So as you can see, there's a washer right here, and then the seal, then another washer and a retaining ring, and then the dust cover. So I've got the washer, which is a bigger washer, and we're going to go with seal, and then the other washer, the snap ring, and the dust cover. So I've always learned on dirt bikes that you put a piece of cellophane or you take a Ziploc bag and cut the plastic off it. This might be a little thin, I'm not sure. But then you grease up that, you grease up the seal so that you don't tear anything installing it over the end of this. So here goes. And there it is. It slid right over the end, and the thing about it on these older bikes is they weren't as critical and as difficult with as many moving parts. Boy, a new dirt bike fork has got a lot more going on, but still it's not it's not rocket science. You can struggle through your first one and it'll probably be fine, and then your second one will just be better. I'm going to use a Tusk seal driver, and the way it works is this is adjustable for different size forks, but really what it's supposed to be is, I believe it's supposed to be, well, maybe not. I'm thinking that this is the end. This is the end that should go next to the seal, but really this is probably it. So we'll put it on here, and then we'll get the slide and see how it works. I twisted a little piece of, I keep this stuff around it. It's stuff that comes with like electrical devices that kind of tie the extension cord together in packaging, but it comes in handy. I just leave it with the zip ties. I've got a bunch of them, and I can use them for electrical stuff, but they come in handy for everything. So I've got that on there, and then the slide should just pound this right in, and the fit is really good, so I'm assuming this is just going to go right in. And probably before I do that, I think I'll pull it back out and I'll put a little lubrication around the oil seal. Very successful, went in there real easy. I did put a little bit of the fork special O-ring grease, PC03. I put that around the seal and then aligned the tool up and just slid it in. It didn't take much. Probably could have done it with a socket, but there it is. That's seals installed, and there's the snap ring is in place, and the seals underneath that washer and snap ring. One of my favorites. Robin Trower. So anyway, what I do down here with this bolt, which is in all the videos, it's nothing. So it calls for like 44 foot-pounds. Well, I don't have the special tool to hold it from the inside to apply 44 foot-pounds. So I just take the impact and I give it a slight bump, give it a couple of pops, and get it snug. Never had a problem with them coming out. So that's how I get past the special tool. Well, I'm on to the next one. Got a little Yama bond and then a little bit of thread locker for that screw there. And there's the other one that's on. And I was able to get it up in here around those O-rings a little easier than I thought. So that's all in there. Fork cap tightened. Only issue is this piston doesn't move up and down. Now if I pull this ring, chances are all that oil is going to come out. And it's all measured. So I'm going to have to think about that. I probably am not going to do anything about that. I really don't go so deep into these things that I'm fixing everything. I mean, if it's a somebody who wants to buy this thing to, you know, drive the country, well then, or race or whatever, I don't think it'll make a hill of beans difference. And that'll make my decision to put the fork brace on, because that will tie the legs together, and it might soothe any of an irregularity if this doesn't give anti-dive and the other one does. So we'll get both of these on there and we'll put the fork brace on next after that. It's all on. This was a bear. I had to actually put a chisel in the crack and open this bottom pinch area up just to get it in, and then it still was tough because of the O-rings that hold the seal, but they're in. I'm checking for a leak, and I'm not exactly sure if it's gonna leak. If it does, I'm gonna have to probably find a new one of these, because they don't show parts available in here like seals, or I'll pull it apart and see if I can reseal it. This one's froze. This one's not, but it looks like it's leaking up through the seals, and it might want to come out of this side here. So just gonna let it sit, see what happens. I can actually do this with the wheel on. I can just drain the fork fluid and then pull the caps and pull the springs, and after I fixed it, and just put new fluid in. So it's a lot of work, but at least I don't have to pull the forks off. But I was able to save the sticker and the sticker. They don't look great, but it kind of gives it that age look. But now I'm on to mounting. I've got the new tire on, and these weights obviously don't want to work. These are for like a car. Then there's tape weights, but there's no place really to tape the weight on this angle here. This is a little area. I could probably, if I could cut the weights in half, maybe I could slide them along there. But this is what Suzuki has right here, and I'm gonna have to try and source that. So I'm gonna ask around and see whether there's some, you know, available that are just normal, you know, everyday weights that will work in that situation. So we're getting it balanced, and we're gonna put the wheel back on. So you clean up all these pieces. Some of these I'm gonna replace. That's the Speedo. I took that snap ring off and I lubed it up behind it, but there's a big seal I couldn't get out, and I'm not going to mess with it. So I'll get that all cleaned up. I cleaned up in here, and now what I do is, if the bearings feel good, which this one feels really good, I just pop off the little dust cap. And as you can see, it looks pretty good in there too. So I may not even put any grease on that. Let's find the seal first. So that grease still looks good. Still pliable, and I'm good with that. I'm not gonna mess with it. I'll clean up these bolts while I'm here. Got a little thing with brake cleaner and a little brush. So I figure I'll clean that up. Clean up those bolts. And we're about ready to put the wheel on. Now it's all on. So I've got the headlight. I'm going to do the handlebars and the headlight. And that's that ugly weight that I've got to find weights that actually are made for this. And just kind of get the final once over. I've got to get in here and get some of that rust out, and also get some rust out of here and out of there. So get all the little nitpicky things, like this thing's loose, however that, get that up in there and start to get it to rolling. I'll probably do the exhaust. I'll freshen it up. I don't know if I'm going to paint it. It looks pretty good. And get a rolling unit here. Possibly even just start it again, run it, because I haven't since put the whole air box in and redid the jetting. So I'll probably end up doing that, then move on to the paint. This is the tail piece. I just got done washing it. Got it all clean. I'm going to start sanding on it. Bike is sitting here, and I'm coming to the conclusion I might have to replace both of these. They're two parts. There's the top part here, which everything's fine on these that I know of. I'll probably have to check them too. But there's the frozen one, and then over here I'm checking for a leak. If it doesn't leak, I'm probably good, but it sure looks like there's going to be an issue there. I'm feeling oil, but then again, I lubed the Speedo gear drive down there, so that might just be leaking out. And so on to the body work. We're going to start sanding and doing the first coat of primer with a guide coat. Get this stuff flat and straight and ready for painting. So these pieces are ready for primer, but I am not going to primer this fender. This thing is wiggly. You know, it's going to move, it's going to wiggle, flex, and I'm afraid that the primer, you know, won't move with it. So I am going to try to do this without primer, whereas the rest of these things I just going to do the normal prime and paint. So the gas tank's next. Well, the sticker, I tried 180, and I mean, I'm just grinding and grinding, and ends up that you sand the outside just as much as you do here. So you pretty much get down to metal anyway by the time you get it completely out. So I am using the air grinder. Not bad for one-handed, huh? That did a great job. Look at that. Yep. Now just a little sanding. And we got a dent here. I think there's a couple other dents. Little ones. But we're going to get this thing whipped into shape. Got it all ready for the first run of body filler. So this is going to actually not be too bad because, you know, it's right on that body line. And that might, let's see if I can get it closer here. That might kind of freak some people out, but this body line comes around over here, and then who knows where it's actually supposed to peak at, where it's not. These two body lines will come together. This might be out a little bit more than on the other side, but if I bridge it up, bring it back, you'll never know. And there's also a little dent here that I couldn't sand out. Pretty much got everything else out of it. To the point I feel that the primer that I use, which is a really high build primer, and I just love this primer. I could put on 8 coats or 10 coats, and it would just hide a multitude of sins. So there's another dent. I don't know if you can see down it, but that popped up at me. Got that all feathered out. Like I said, 3 or 4, maybe even 5 good coats of my primer, and we'll be in business. Got it on, and take a little cheese grater before it gets too hugely stiff. I'm wondering if that black marker is going to bleed through somewhere. So anyhow, we're starting to sand it off. All ready for primer. Looks worse than it is. And I hope I got every pit out. But that's what the guide coat's for. Everything's in the booth here. And I really have never used adhesion promoter on like these side covers, but this fender, I'm going to use it. So it calls for a little light coat, and then 15 minutes later a heavier coat, and then after that you've got 30 minutes to paint it, but no sooner than 15. Okay, it's primer. I don't know if you can hear me underneath the mask. The mask. Ah, the mask. The coronavirus mask. Yeah, that coronavirus is a serious thing. So anyway, we got it in primer. I guess I can take the mask off. There we go. So now, the big question is am I going to be able to sand out everything on this fender good enough for me? I mean, you can see some marks in there, and I don't know. So I'm just gonna, you can see that lifted area right in there where the clear coat was. And you'll be amazed what will come out. So I will probably, I've got a little left in the gun, I'll probably hit that again. This looks good. Just to get as much build as I can on that. You can see the area there. It's kind of like a wavy line. And that pinhole I'm obviously going to have to fill, but that is a question mark whether it'll come out without building it up again with more primer. So I'm going to try to build up a little more primer on there, but if I go too thick, then it runs the risk of not curing underneath these other coats. So just keep doing it like I've always done it, and you can see that dent, the fill there. I'm going to probably have to fill that again just to bring it up a little bit. It's really close though. Really close. So one last coat of primer, and then we're going to do the guide coat, and then tomorrow sand it. So we're putting on the guide coat. I'm going to put it a little heavier right around that area where the dent was. Just to make sure I get enough coverage. There it is there. Yeah, and there's little spots and all sorts of stuff, and it doesn't matter because it's going to get wet sanding, and the guide coats, again, the biggest thing I learned in painting. So I've said it before, you know, without the guide coat, you might be sanding, let's say, in this area here, when it doesn't need it. You know, you basically, when you sand and all of the black comes off, you're done. If there's still a black mark somewhere, it's either a pit or a low spot. And once you get, you know, the rather smooth areas, like I assume this is just going to sand right out. It's going to be beautiful. Not going to have any low spots to speak of. And the high build primer will have enough in it to where I can sand any high or low spots off. But where there's a deep low spot or a dent, you might say, like you can see right there, that little dent, if we can get that out without having to refill or reprime, but there's the pits in there, and you're going to see those pits are going to be black spots. So those pits are definitely going to need to be filled. So I'm going to be filling around there a little bit. There they are. And I've got the tank up here. So, you know, there's the guide coat. I just ran the sandpaper across this to see if there was any big problems, and it doesn't look like there's anything. You can see a little low spot right there, but really see how that gets to be just total gray, and I'm blocking it. I'm not doing it with a round, I'm doing it with a block, so if there's any high spots, it'll bridge it. And as you can see, it looks pretty good, right? And like I said, I think this whole tank is going to look good other than the tank or the dent. So take and wipe that off. And you can, that's pretty much how you do the whole thing. And you can see right in here, a couple little dots. So you just keep sanding till all the black's out. And if you can get it all out without having to hit metal, I mean, even if you hit metal, then you're okay as long as you get all the black out. And if you keep grinding, you probably have a low spot, but that's basically, see if I can get those little black spots out. So I'm kind of going at different angles. And I'll go this way for a while, then I'll go this way for a while. That way, you know you're getting an even sand on it. Sand it off there, not just one way. And so now those black spots are gone. So this whole area right here is ready for glass-like and glass-looking paint. No imperfections. So as I'll work my way around the tank, and I know when I get to that dent, there's going to be some work to do. So here's kind of a example. You know, I sanded all the black off, all of it's off. There's a few little speckles, but I'm gonna finish sand it with maybe more like an 800, but I don't think so. I think I'm still gonna stick with the 400, you know. And I think 400 gives it a really good bite for the paint. But see, there's a little low spot here, but I've got enough primer on it, so if I continue to just go at different angles, let's see what we got here. See, there's still a little baby low spot. This will come out. This is not a hard one at all. This one's pretty damn easy, but I'm using a real rigid block. And there's some areas I really built up the primer so I could get this out, get this stuff to sand out. And voila, flat as glass. So I'm doing the hard, it's a hard Durablock, and you know, it's rigid. I mean, it bends a little. See if you can see it. It bends a little, but this block, it's got two different thicknesses. This side's really spongy, and this side is a little less spongy. So like these corners right here, you know, I'm going to take them down with this soft. It'll keep a nice edge. I'll probably do a little more with the block to sharpen the edge, and even maybe come up from the bottom. You know, it's just, you just work it, and really, you know, if you're getting it this smooth, even if you can feel a little something here or there, I mean, you really aren't going to if it's that smooth, but like this, there's a little bow right here. Well, that's natural. I think that comes with the tank. You know, it's just not going to show up. It's low spots and pinholes that show up. This is definitely going to come out. No problem at all. It's going to be flat, super flat. But the advantage of the guide coat is typically before I would just sand until I kind of hit metal in spots. But I don't have to do that now. I know that right here, I'm just got a little bit more sanding to do, and a little bit more here, and probably quite a bit there, but this just tells me where I need to sand and where I don't, so I'm not sanding forever and sanding all the primer off. This part here, I'm using the softest. I went over it with the hard block, and this is where the seat covers it, so it's not going to be seen. And I think what happens there is the factory actually just doesn't give a shit, because everything else is definitely smooth. And down here we've got a, you know, like a split down the middle of the tank where they welded it and created the tank, and they smoothed it flat everywhere, but they don't care in here. So I'm going to follow that. You know, I could take and fill maybe a little around that, but the tank's going to cover it. So I'm just taking the soft, and I'm just going to get it, work it out, work each little area out instead of trying to block it. So that'll come out. Like I said, the seat pretty much comes up to this line right here. So there's that. And I'll do these. And you can see how the soft block kind of gets in there more, so it's not as flat, but still flat enough where the naked eye is not going to see it. And I'll try to remember to take a good picture of this, make a good little segment to show you after it's painted, and to show myself, you know, I forget how this wasn't blocked, you know, with a pure flat block like this area up here. And I will take the, you know, the block with the really soft side, the contour side, where you can really, you know, contour around. But I'll go over the whole tank again lightly with this on all the edges and top and everything before I completely finish. Every time I need a little encouragement, I put this YouTube video on. This guy's amazing. He's doing a drum cover. And you could just watch this once a day in the morning and just get you going. Look at this guy. Unbelievable. So, with that in mind, we got all the little black pieces out, all the little areas out, and we went through to the gold, and just a little piece of metal there, which is okay. And you'll see when it's painted, probably the only thing that'll show up is this little ripple line here. Just amazing, isn't he? There's a bass cover where a guy on a bass is doing the cover, and it's awesome too, but the drum's just so much better because when he gets going here, man, it's just crazy. Ah, yeah. These pieces all came out. They came out so good that I didn't have to fill anything. It just all sanded out, flat, smooth. Even the fender, which I thought for sure I was going to have to fill, but nothing. And now I'm working on this side cover, and I know right here, this little piece here is going to need to be filled. And I'm wondering about this. Saw this before. See if this will sand out. So we'll get that. Might have to fill that little hole and then go over everything just a little bit, just visually make sure everything is ready to paint. We're about ready to spray the clear. Got the color on the base. Looks nice. Looks like a really good match. That's one thing I'm noticing right now. Turn on the fans a little bit more. Get this cleared out. A lot of fumes in here. And of course, this thing fell on the ground right as I was tacking, doing a last tack cloth. But I can't see any place where it looked like it was scraped all over, but there's one little spot, I don't know if you can see it, one little dig right there. And guess what? This isn't a 19 or 18 something. And if that guy, the guy, I keep talking about that guy, if that guy comes up to me and says, Oh, it looks like you had a scratch in there. Yeah, I have to walk away from that guy. But, so right now what we need to do is put on the Suzuki sticker here and the GS1100E sticker here and here. I think there's a Suzuki goes back here. I'm gonna have to check. But that's next. Oh yeah, we got the speakers up here now in the basement where all the painting goes on. And the pool party. Had a great pool party. There's the board. And I know those guys in Shingletown are just dying to come for the next one. And probably they'll be participating in the loser bracket, which we may or may not have next one. But basically, here's our past champions. And there's our doubles champions for the last few years. So anyhow, let's go to the spray booth through the parts department. There's no parts manager here today. He's sleeping in his little bed. All right, so we got the emblems on. And it's time to shoot the clear. Now this is not what I understand to be correct. And I'm putting it on there just to mess with that guy. That guy. You know that guy. The guy you hate. The guy that's just an ass. That's gonna come up to your motorcycle and tell you how the color is not the right color, or that sticker in the front fender is not factory. So I'm not sure whether this sticker went on the fender or whether it went on the tail, or this sticker. And I think that some had this and some had the Suzuki spelled out, so I just used both. All right, it's done. It's all shiny. All the clear is on it. And I had one little run on this right over in here. It's no big deal. And my helper is going to completely dust out the whole clear top. No. But the clear laid on extremely well. And so now we just let it dry and we get ready to put it all back together. This is going to be the last part of this segment. I figure this is a good place to stop. It's gonna sit here for, I really want it to sit here for like, I want to say at least, I mean overnight for sure, but it probably 3 days. I can stand and not touch it for 3 days, which means the coronavirus probably has killed me by then, which is probably not too far from the truth. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a scary thing. Thank God I've got these projects to work on. If I get isolated, I've got like 4 or 5 more bikes I can do. And then I just have UPS drop it off and then I'll hunker down. But this one came out nice. Nice and shiny. I was right on the verge of having runs, which is the way I typically do it. I can't help myself, but like down here you can see there's a little bubble there, a little, and I think down here there's 2 drips. And they came right off of here. So I really loaded on. You can see that little scratch there. Gouged from when I dropped it. But all in all, I mean, you know, the reflection is just, it's beautiful. And I love that clear. And I'm sure all clears are going to be this good, but for some reason, this clear, it really works good for me. And it's not expensive. The base coat was like 35 bucks for like a half quart. And I've got enough to do another small motorcycle, and I keep saving this paint, but I'd probably never use it. So we are to the point of the final assembly, and that will come in the next video. And my helper has come back, but he's camera shy. So anyway, that's the clear that I'm using, and still got it in this gun. I thought maybe there would be something I'd have to do, but I've got to clean that gun, and then we'll move on to the next segment, which will be basically putting it all together and starting it. And I'm not sure if I'm going to drive it or not. Might just trailer it down to bike night with like 3 bikes with no miles on them. So until the next video, I will see you then.